to leave this up.
Test.
Do we have more than one mixer?
Huh?
Do we have more than one mixer?
Yeah, we got one more.
We're in the second floor.
All right, in the A room. Test 1 2 3. Test. Test 1 2 3. Test. Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3.
Stick it in here if you need to.
I stick it in there already.
Because mine is not a very exciting visual aid, but it is.
I think this is.
Yeah, that's my HDMI things.
Do you need to use this?
No.
I'm using this.
You're using this one?
Yes.
Okay.
At the same time?
No, we're
No,
we're
I'm going
separate.
first.
Oh, you're going first. Okay, in that case, let me
Okay, and then I just choose laptop when I'm ready.
the laptop and then choose all the screens.
Okay, cool. Gotcha.
Make sure this is good. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Actually, your laptop's not showing up.
Should I close this back?
No, you're good.
No, it's just going to black. This thing hard about it. This isn't only this is a nice to have, not a have to have,
Okay. So we're gonna.
which is fine. It's okay.
Well, it's not showing up on the screen.
Right, but it's okay because this is a nice to have and not a have to have.
Okay.
So I don't have to show this article. I'd like to, but I don't have to.
Yeah, it'll just take us a minute to get that fixed.
Okay.
So. All right, let me switch here.
Bobby, how do I use this thing?
Oh, you just go left and right.
Left and right. Huh? Okay, got it.
And then it has a laser pointer right there if you need it.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
And what's this bottom for?
That's to black out the screen.
Okay. It's okay. Okay, folks, it's 2:30, so I'll start the first part of the next hour. My name is Shahabuddin Khan. I'm an associate professor of law at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale. My colleagues and family and friends call me Dean or Shahab. My parents told me the name meant money. I'm still waiting for that. And, I think it's just a trick they played on me. Any legal research and writing faculty here? Good, great, awesome. Any doctrinal faculty? Okay, good. And so what I'm going to talk about today is a bit of what I do in my LRW classroom and also in my doctrinal classes. I know there's a talk this afternoon about tech in crim law. I also use online platforms in my criminal law course as well. So again, I'm not an expert in this by any means, so if you have ideas at the end or suggestions, please share those with me as well. So we all know teaching legal research and writing requires a lot of information, a lot of papers, and in fact, one of the softwares that I have started using in grading my papers is called 11 trees, as in trees, because it is estimated that each teacher uses about 11 trees annually of paper. We'll talk about that software as well. So legal writing, a lot of handouts, a lot of assessment, a lot of assignments, memorandums, research assignments, and so forth, which could require a lot of papers and a lot of shuffling into the classroom. I started teaching legal writing 5 years now, and for the past 2 years, when I go into my classroom, it's only with my flash drive. Even my attendance is taken electronically. And so it's completely, there's some drawbacks, of course. I've got problems with students. As some of you might recognize the problems with having students on the internet in the classroom. But again, as much as I can monitor and make it interactive, it keeps them away for the most part, I think. So I use TWEN. All of you are probably familiar with TWEN, which is a platform off of Westlaw. Lexis has the same. I also use Blackboard in my doctrinal classes. So any of those, TWEN, Lexis, Blackboard, can accomplish the same functions that I'm going to suggest here. So there's no preference over any one. I just started out with TWEN first and kind of stuck with it. And in our school at Nova, I think the faculty is much more proficient now because our administration actually mandated that all of the faculty take a course on Blackboard and TWEN. I'm not sure if you want to suggest it to your faculty, but we revolted, and a 15-hour course was reduced to about 3, and then we took it. Everyone pretty much has to be familiar with these online platforms to some extent. So from the syllabus to the handouts, policies, everything is done online. I do not bring any hard copies into the class, and if you're familiar with TWEN, it's user-friendly in terms of how to create links and on the course menu, how to add syllabus and so forth. For instance, even my handouts, policies, and syllabus are interactive. For example, I think I posted, or I have somewhere here, let's just escape very quickly. So here's one of my old syllabus, and so even the model rules or the rules regulating the Florida Bar, I don't require them to buy copies of these. In fact, my next legal writing class will all be e-textbooks. And so it probably will save them money, and they can pretty much do everything with the e-textbook that we can do with the hard copies, from highlighting, scratching it up, summarizing, and so forth. So they're not really missing anything that we would expect on a hard copy book. And then in the actual syllabus itself, you know, all of my additional readings outside of the books are linked in automatically. And so that's what I meant by interactive. It's all there. So let's just minimize this. I'll come back to that in a bit. So part of TWEN also allows us to track the students. So I take attendance through TWEN. I'm also able to see their activity. My classes are generally 2 hours per class, twice a week. It's a 3-credit course. And so I'm able to print a report at the end to see what they did. And I share this information with them. So they know my expectations and will understand if I'm able to, if they will know that I will be aware that they're messing around on the internet if I'm not seeing a proper report. And that goes into evaluating and assessing them in terms of participation points. So they pay more attention. What's next? So again, all of the PowerPoints that I have are interactive. So if I'm teaching about the US court system, all of the different wonderful resources out there, but how the US court system are designed could be automatically linked into the PowerPoint, and we pull up each as we're going through and we discuss that part, or whatever the case may be. If I'm teaching research, I will link directly into Westlaw or to Bloomberg or to FindLaw and pull it up. And so, there's a part of research where we still go to the library and dust off the books and show them. So I actually bring in or take pictures of the books so they can see it, because our library has pretty much gotten rid of most of the books. And so if they're starting out a small practice and want to save money, they might have to consult the books, might not be able to afford Westlaw or Lexis right away. So I still show them that online again, of course, and so forth. One of the other things you can do is I poll them on questions instantly and get feedback and discuss. Some of them are shy, don't want to raise their hands for whatever reasons, and so I get instant feedback and questions and force more discussions. The assignment. All of my assignments are also given through TWEN or Blackboard for the doctrinal classes, and so some of my colleagues, I try to convince them, I haven't graded a paper with a pen for 3 years. So assignments come in electronically and are released electronically back to them. And like Blackboard and TWEN, there's an anonymous grading system feature within. So for certain assignments that are required by our school to be graded anonymously, I have them get the numbers from the student affairs office or whatever the case may be, and they input that into TWEN, and it becomes completely anonymous to me. So that feature is there as well. It also, in some instances, when I give an assignment in these online platform, if they're not doing well, it links them up and forces them to do other assignments. I don't want to use the word to remediate, but it forces them to help figure out. So almost instant feedback. Something I learned from one of my kids, they do these performance tests, and if they're not scoring well, it forces them to do something else, right? And so that you can do as well here. One of the lessons, or one of the things I do, is if a student is not doing well, I automatically have in my course a lesson from Cali that pops up and say, do this. So a citation lesson from Cali or Alwood will pop up and they'll do it, and then they send me a score report and so forth. So that's very interactive without me having to do anything. So it really functions very well and efficiently. And I said, I return, TWEN also track grades for you either by letter or numerically, and so you can have a pretty good picture of who is doing fine, who needs help, who are at risk, and that forces me or gives me a better opportunity to reach out to them and say, well, here's what's going on. As opposed to the old spreadsheets tracking that we grade at the end, and we might have missed a student halfway during the semester that we could have helped. And so I think this is pretty good in that sense. So recently I started experimenting with grading, and I started grading with track and change in Word for the last 4 years. So partially because my handwriting is not that good, but and then I started looking at softwares out there. There's this new software, well, not that new. It's called Annotate for Word Legal Writing Edition. Anyone familiar with it? It's actually and that's the company 11 Trees started it. If you Google number 11 Trees, and I'm not recommending or say this is it. It's just what's out there. And this is a pretty exciting software that helps you grade. It works with Word 2007, 10, and 13, and Mac, and now they're actually coming out with a Google version, Google Doc version of it. And it's pretty useful. Many law schools are actually buying it or getting the license for their faculty already. And so if you were to buy it on your own, I think it's like $100 a year. If the school buys it, everyone is licensed to use it. And what you do is, it has about 300 plus customized comments already in it. And you can add to it. In fact, you can add up to, I think, 900 more comments. And you highlight your text in that essay or memorandum of law, and it automatically generates a comment based on the error in the text. Pretty neat software. You can use it in essay exams and doctrinal courses as well. So let's just do that there and pull up one of these. So here's what it will do for you, just like a track change, except, when I did the track change grading, I did sticky keys. This does it all for you. Plus, it's got 300 plus comments already customized for legal writing. And so it'll pop it in there, it'll suggest different changes, and all really quickly. You can literally, I don't think we're taking shortcuts. I read the papers beforehand, and once I started using these products, I was very cautious and tested it by regrading manually, and see how it would come out. And for the most part, I think it did what I would have done the old way, with a fairly good deal of accuracy. And so that's an example of how your paper will show using that product. Go back here for a second. And so you highlight the text, and it will suggest comments that should be there based on the error, citations, and all of that stuff. There's another product that's also out there. I haven't used this yet, but a colleague of mine tried it and says it's good. It's called Essay Tagger. In this, again, you highlight and it gives you comments, but with this product, you actually have to grade some papers, so you store comments after, and then it recognizes your comments and put it, if it sees the same error across the different documents. So if there's a citation error, same citation error among 10 students' paper, it'll place that exact comment for each of those students because it's the identical error. So that's another good program. And then this third one that I've seen out there, edX. This is actually free, and it's by Harvard and MIT. And in this case, you've got to grade again several essays. It recognizes your style of grading, what you're looking for, and then it trains your computer to grade for you. I haven't tried this one yet because I'm scared here. I probably need some more time to test it to see how accurate it reflects if I had graded the old way. So I haven't really tried this, but my student, my research assistant just pointed out this to me late last year. And so, again, just so much that could assist and make sense of what we're doing. So, in addition to the grading and all of that good stuff, we know in TWEN, I still have some of my colleagues that paste a paper on their door that says sign up for conferences. And so I don't do that. First of all, I validate their privacy, even though it's not a FORPA issue. Plus, in class, you start a sign-up sheet, and the last person gets the last spot available. So it's all on TWEN. I release X number of times and slots, and they go on. and they're reminded of their meetings with me. They cannot forget, and I'm informed if they change it or cancel it. It's a pretty good system here as well for setting up individual conferences with the students. And in fact, on TWEN, after a meeting, in their little time slots, I write up a report. They can review the report. They can tell me if they find it helpful, if they had any additional comments. Really neat tracking system. Quizzes, we all know you can do any quiz or assignment built into the system. The questions are there, the options are there, feedback is there, instant grading. So that's, and you open the links and they take the test, and you know, I could be sipping a glass of wine and they're taking their test. And so it allows them to do a lot more outside of the classroom as well, because we've got just X number of hours, and recently we cut back to a 13-week semester. And so this just helped. And by the way, I'm talking about all of this as though I'm teaching a class online. This is teaching my class in the classroom. This is the platform that helps me facilitate teaching efficiently, effectively, and covering a wide variety of topics with good quality. And so it really manages and speeds the course up. And of course, I link all of the Cali lessons that are relevant right through TWEN or into TWEN, and that helps as well. So I find using these type of platforms really helpful. Some of my colleagues, and I try as much as I can, still give back or require hard copies to come in the mailbox for grading, and then returns a hard copy that's penned up in an envelope. Maybe it's good practice, and but I think we can improve efficiency and keep quality with these programs. And so for my criminal law class, for example, I teach a lot of, I have a corresponding Blackboard that goes with the class. So after the live class is over, live discussion continues. And you know, and the conversation continues until the next class. So it never really ends. And that's because of these programs. That's all I had to say. Any questions or suggestions for me? Yes.
You mentioned that.
Yes. Well, it'll tell me, for example, how many times and for how long they accessed a particular PowerPoint or document on TWEN. And the TWEN folks, Westlaw folks, are really helpful. My librarian, our law librarian, really helpful in teaching us how to do that. So it can generate course reports, participants reports, participation report, how they're doing in terms of grades, all of that it could generate for you. And obviously there are some features where you have to indicate that you like to track the student as you're posting these documents. And it tells you exactly what they have been doing on the computer with the document. It generates a report that tells you how long they were actually there. Now, they could have been signed on and not really doing anything. But again, I move around the classroom quite a bit. I'm never in front of the podium. And so hands-on in there, you know, and so for the most part, I think, you know, we can never stop them from surfing and shopping. But for the most part, I think it actually helps. Or at least I make them feel that I know everything that they're doing. And I tell them about it. And so they don't know that I actually cannot track it 100%, but I make them feel so. No. No. Yes. Well, yeah. Well, you know, it's funny is we have cameras everywhere in the classroom. And when they're in there, I record if I'm posting them, I record. And I do tell them the cameras capture all of them, including their computers. Right? And I don't know if it does, but that scares them as well. Yes?
I have a question about.
Right. Yes.
So how do you?
Well, I mean, it's the same thing for me. When I graded manually, I still had to use the curve. The curve actually brought my grades up, right? And so I play with the numbers, you know, and I pile them up if I have got a set of ranges, and I generally have 4 or 5 different ranges from, you know, the 80s to 90s and the 70 to 80 and so forth. And I don't see really any difference
Tell the students though, because you know how
yes.
they get a number and then you just hope grade.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
How do you deal with it?
Yes, and I mean, you know, it's hard because, you know, you start out and maybe a student had a B average the first 2 assignments and then wound up with a C plus, and they're, well, how did this happen? So I have in my legal writing class at least 3 mandatory conferences with each of them. And at each stage, we go over in part of that conference, where are you on the course assessment-wise? And so I'm not building any expectations for an A plus and they come back with a C. You know, and so I think that helps to be upfront and sort of, and they are very aware of our curve, which is, I think, first semester is 2.5 to 2.7, C plus average, and that's you know, told to them very quickly, and they're, you know, I think that too helps with expectations. No one really expects 5 A's or 6 A's in a 20 student class, and our legal writing classes are generally about 25 students. Yeah. No, actually. Now, I do require in some instances, if we're dealing with a case from beginning to end, I suggest to them to get a big folder, because in practice, you've got to keep a file. And so we create a file. And in that instance, they'll have a case with the transcripts, the motions, the documents, the research, so they can simulate that experience as well. So it doesn't miss that part. What it helps really with is all of the information that I give to them. I'm able to say, we need these to be printed in your file so we can use it as you would in a law firm or law practice. So we don't miss that part. And so I don't find it, I don't find them, they actually like it, I think. It's easier, they can access it on the go. You know, they can automatically from their syllabus link up all of what I required in their syllabus. All of my deadlines from their syllabus could instantly be transferred to their calendar and all that good stuff from TWEN.
And is participation?
In some cases, yes, depending on what I'm covering. If it's about the memorandum of law, it will be. If it's just something optional, probably not. But for the most part, they all do, because once they have seen their colleagues started the conversation, for some reason they want to get in. So, and sometimes I start the conversation, and that prompts them too. But again, so I find that I actually teach as much using these online platforms that I do in the classroom. And I regret not, because the years past, I haven't done that. And so I could only get across to them what I had to do in that 2 hours or 4 hours a week. That's it. And of course, from the memorandums and so forth. Yeah. Good? Thank you.
Let's see if maybe it's going to feel like it.
Is it a website or just?
No, this is just a PDF that's on my machine.
Can we put it on this one?
Sure. Okay.
D drive.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll load it up on the desktop and you can just
That's fine, yeah.
you can delete it after you're done.
That's okay. Cool. Thank you.
Change this.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Malden, and I am, in fact, your. Well, let me see. How does this thing? Yeah. Oh, there it is. Thank you. Well, I don't really care. All right. So, I'm Sarah Malden. I am your token law firm librarian. And I'm thrilled to be here because I've heard so much wonderful stuff about this conference that I was like, ooh, it's going to be here. Ooh. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about some words you've heard a lot. This is an article that I wrote for AALL Spectrum. So if you're not a librarian, I'll put it up with my presentation. And it's about how to go from being a law student to working in a law firm. And there's pretty much nothing that's the same about these two things. And so some of this is something that law librarians do in firms all the time. And I'm gonna say something that may or may not be everyone's favorite, but there are two kinds of law firm librarians. The kind like me and everybody else. Because I am active, I want to get out, I want to know what's new, I want to know what's going on. And I also happen to have a selection of incredibly receptive law schools in Atlanta. I have been a guest speaker in a class here. I've been a guest speaker at Emory. And I just basically talk about what this is going to be like. And in fact, the brilliant Christine Dringhouse invited, or hoped that I would invite some of her librarians to my summer associate orientation because it's way more than most firms do. Because I'm stubborn, I get 2 hours with my summers. There are firms that get 20 minutes for the library. That's it. You'll figure it out. You're a smart kid, you'll figure it out. Not true. So I have a lot of things in here. They got to be flexible, because who knows what they're going to get when they get to my spot. And this is my favorite. I'm so glad that they put this one out for me. It is the job of firm librarians to be bothered and to encourage associates to ask questions, big or small, as they journey to become more efficient and confident researchers. So they all spend all this time going, I'm not supposed to ask the librarian anything. I need to do this on my own. No, that's what I'm here for. And I want every one of you to make an effort, a conscious effort, to reach out to a law firm or 2 or 20 in where you are, where your law schools are, and say, what is it that we aren't providing, or what could we provide better that gets students ready? And it's not just the librarians, because, you have to be a certain size before you have a librarian. But it's the IT department, it's all kinds of people. How does, it's because some of it is not, it's not that they don't know, it's that they don't necessarily, they haven't been required to have the sort of social skills that are needed in a law firm. They're kind of different from other social skills. They haven't had a secretary before. They don't understand what it is a secretary does. A secretary does not get your dry cleaning. I've had that happen with first years. And also, let us tell you what it is we're looking for. We want, because, okay, what are we all after here? Anybody got a word, a concept that every one of us in this room is after? We're looking for practice-ready graduates, right? Because how does that help you? Your hiring statistics go, woo! How does that help me? I have people that ask questions, that understand when to ask a question, and that know how to word process, and know how to do all kinds of other things that they need, because law firms are changing as far as headcount, a lot. Once upon a time, you might have 2 attorneys assigned to a secretary. We're up to occasionally 5. I see a time when it will be, because every law student knows how to type, it will be, 10 or so to a secretary. So guess what? If they don't know how to use styles, if they don't know how to create a document the way that it's supposed to be created, then they're just going to flounder. It's not going to be good. So talk with us. And not every law firm is going to be receptive. Not every librarian, not every IT director, people are different. People are busy, all those things. But if you, even if all you do is have a number of IT directors over to the campus for lunch one day and simply have a discussion, what are the things that what are the concepts you want them to know when they get here? Because we're looking for the best graduates we can find, and you're looking for graduates that get hired. It's a nice little symbiosis there. It's really cool. And so I have a little bit else here, and all these are going to be, see if you look at the bottom here, I have extra special things that if you're a AALL member, you can get automatically, but for y'all that aren't, I am putting this up for you. And let's see here. 2 fantastic things. This is possibly the coolest thing I've ever done for anyone. My assignment worksheet. Steal it, take it, use it, because it goes through assignments the way they are in firms, which is not assignments the way they are in school, where they have to be graded, so there has to be an answer, right? So we got all this useful information up here. The very good stuff like when's it due? What's the matter number? What do they want? Because if they just want a list of cases and you write up this 20-page memo, you're not going to have a very happy person that's deciding whether or not you're going to have a job. Because what is summer associate season? It is an 8-week or more job interview. That's really what it is. And so I want them to succeed. It's like one of the filers I have had in my life, when they would come, she referred to them as my goslings because they follow me around. And I want it to be that way. So I want everybody here to say, use all the resources you have. You know, it's not cheating to use your resources. That's good practice. So we got some other stuff. What's the background? Are there names? Or how are they spelled? Important dates, because, you know, hey, perhaps we're litigating under the laws it was in 2006. You know, important stuff. What's the jurisdiction? This came directly from my experience as a law librarian in Nevada. In each county, they have a district court. Across the street from the district court was the U.S. District Court. So they'd say, it's in district court. Well, that doesn't mean anything, right? So there you go. What am I expected to find? Terms of art. There are people I can't discuss this with because the telephone is one of our best reference tools, but perhaps it's something that we don't want. We don't need the agency to know that we're interested, right? Okay. And then the stuff that helps them at the bottom. So here are, this is where I went, this is what I did, so when they don't find anything, they can say, here it is. Then the attorneys will say, well, did you go ask Sarah? And then I will get them, and then I will get a very weird, difficult, inexplicable question. So that's that part. And I want them to be okay. And then we have a quick little thing, and that's the tips for success. And it's basic stuff. You know, if all of you are telling your students this, then they're going to be better at practicing law. So how to figure out when you're done? You're looking for repeats. If you've been messing around for 10 minutes and have found nothing even approaching what you're doing, call somebody, talk to somebody, figure out what's going on. And there might not be an answer, and that might be okay. Full text is not your friend. Books are great. You know, this is definitely a librarian wrote this, but really the number one thing is ask questions and training them to be willing to ask questions and training y'all to find the resources that will help you help your students. So please, please, when I say, how can I help you? Tell me, I want to know. And really, yes, not every law firm person is as gregarious and excited and whatever as I am, but those who, but you're going to find at least somebody somewhere is going to be willing to say, oh, I've been waiting for the day. I've been waiting. So does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Are there particular materials?
Regulations. They also forget very much that statutes exist. It's not that they don't remember that they're just like, I'm like, wait, there could be a statute that says exactly this. Because what do you learn in law school? Cases, cases, cases. Cases are everything. Well, that's not how you write a contract, you know? And I'm also desperately wishing that each one of them is an actual person who knows how to use basic office technology. If they can use, you know, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, they're ready. I'm ready, and if they can use it in a reasonably good way, hooray, I am so excited. So, you know, and I am willing to Skype into anybody's class if you want. I've done it before, and just talk about the real world and what goes wrong, what goes right, and all of that. Any others? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so your form is really useful for written submission. I think that in law firms, associates are often called into the senior partner to give a verbal presentation.
Right.
Does that factor into how you can help your new system?
Well, that is, yeah, the form, that actually is simply for taking the assignment. You know, that's why we ask, what are you expected to produce? What's your deliverable? And if it is a discussion of what I found, then I'm hoping that they'll use that and write that down and say, okay, now I need to prepare to give this, and remember that it's going to be just as painful as it was in school when somebody begins to say, oh, well, no, you're wrong. There's a case that. I have one attorney who says to me regularly, there's a case in Clayton County about this. No, it's actually in Coweta County, and it's really not about that, and that party wasn't involved, but here's the case you wanted. So, yeah, so that's that. And there was somebody over here? Yes. Well, it's not that they don't it's not that they can't, you know, open the thing and do something. It's that they're not opening the thing and doing it efficiently. And they're not opening it and doing it in a way that will help them later when they need to make a table of contents or a table of authorities or put it into the template that the firm requires or that the court requires. So it's the actual word processing knowledge. It's not the opening it up problem. Okay, anyone else? Well, thank y'all so much. And everybody call me. Get all these going, and then you are.
Oh, take your time.
All right. Awesome. Well, I don't have 8 items. What in the world? Okay, let's do these one at a time.
Before you got there.
Yeah. No, I think it selected things randomly.
No.
Always fun.
Thanks for backtracking.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so now I'm excited to hear somebody else.
Thank you. Really? All right, so this is Ready, Set, Freakout, 2 years in the life of a Canvas migration. My name is Daniel Breidenbach. I'm a learning technologist at the Harvard Law School Library. And I've been working with a team for about 2 years now, slowly migrating over to Canvas from a legacy system that we called iSites. So, without further ado, I'll start with the big picture. I'll go over the background of the LMS and also a background of our faculty, the faculty assistants, how they work together. I'll begin with talking about the Canvas pilot. We did a pilot for 1 year, and then we did the migration for 1 year, so I'll talk about those both. Particularly what I want to talk about are the gaps we found between the old LMS and with Canvas. That was primarily what we figured out in the pilot year. And at the very end, I'll discuss the actual migration, which turned out to be a little bit easier than the pilot. I can do that. I'll start with some background. Overview on the LMS background. So our system was called iSites. It was actually built by Harvard University IT. There was no other school that had this. They built 2 things. They built course iSites, which was the LMS, and they built standard iSites, which was essentially an all-purpose site. It had many of the same functions that the LMS did, the course iSites did, except it was used for pretty much anything you could imagine. It was used for research portals. It was used for professors' personal pages. It was used for essentially anytime you wanted a site for anything, you would use a standard iSite. And that's what it was there for. We had iSites for about 10 years, and I wasn't here at the time, but I understand that we had Blackboard many years before that. So I just want to do a little more on the standard iSites before I move over to the course iSites. The Harvard University IT started a 2-year project to migrate all of the standardized sites onto other systems. In total, they had about 5,000 standardized sites, and the law school had just under 300. The biggest challenge to migrating these sites was that they were essentially an all-purpose site, and when a faculty or a staff member wanted to migrate it, they just wanted to migrate it to another single site. And the issue with that is that if they had functionality if they had a lot of different functionality on the same site, it's almost impossible to move that to something else. So for example, there were sites that had a blog, and they had syllabus, and they had course content, and they wanted to move it all to something else. And sometimes that wasn't particularly easy. If the blog was the major part of it, you'd want to move it over to WordPress. If it was really document depository, you'd want to move it over to the wiki. And explaining that to them, that there really is no longer an all-purpose site, and that we have these sites now that really are specialized, that was a hard thing to communicate. So at the law school, we actually moved, of the 300 sites, we actually migrated only about 20 of them. The rest of them we archived and retired. A lot of these sites, honestly, some of these sites were almost completely empty or mostly empty, and they hadn't been used in many years. But the top 20 sites we migrated over. And as you can see, the sites we moved over to were Confluence, WordPress, Canvas, and OpenScholar, which is an instance of Drupal. So returning to the LMS, these are the core sites. The advantage was it was customizable. Everything was built by Harvard University IT, so if the law school, the medical school, any school wanted something built or fixed, we would just ask them to do it, and they would do it. The developers were on site. It was Harvard, so they were right there. They would just do it for us, no problem. And it was a small clientele. It was just us. It wasn't a third-party LMS where it was stationed somewhere and you had a ton of schools that wanted to request something. So those were the advantages. The disadvantages were that over the years the customization became way too much. There were too many patches, too many parts of it. There were too many changes, so that if one single thing needed to be updated, they had to go through all the patches, all the code to eventually fix it. There were security issues. There was essentially no mobile option. Students couldn't watch video on their iPad. They couldn't watch video on their phone. The video options generally were not ideal. And lastly, the reason we eventually migrated was that it was too expensive to maintain. A little background on the law school and how this all works. So each faculty has a faculty assistant. On average, they essentially have about a third of a faculty assistant, not a third of a person, but a third of the person's time. Visiting faculty had usually about a sixth of a faculty assistant. Some faculty had their own personal faculty assistant. And they would do anything from travel arrangements to setting up their sites on their course sites. Some sites were created entirely by the faculty. Others were created by the faculty assistant. There was a range of tech savviness among the faculty. If a faculty member was really good at it, they would just create the entire site themselves, and then that would be it. Other faculty were not as comfortable with it, or they didn't want to do it themselves, so the faculty assistant was really the one who would do it. And that was the biggest case at the law school. We had a lot of faculty assistants who were really the ones who were actually day-to-day working on the site, building the site, improving the site. So I'll move over to the pilot program. And going into the pilot program, we had a lot of foreseen challenges. One of them, the big one being that Harvard University IT was no longer available for quick fixes, updates, or bugs. At this point, moving over to Canvas, Canvas in Salt Lake City, Utah, they have a ton of clients. And if Harvard wants something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen right away. You put a request in, and a ton of other schools would also essentially have to agree that they want to do that as well. Canvas, one thing that we were concerned about was whether Canvas would be as flexible as iSites, and what I mean by that is that we had done so much customization on a lot of our iSites. It was hard to tell if Canvas, essentially out-of-the-box Canvas, would be able to replicate a lot of the functionality that we needed and that we needed right away. And the biggest issue was general like or resistance to change, meaning, people had been working in iSites for 10 years. That was their job. They would take one site, replicate it, and do the same thing year after year after year. So why do we have to change at this point? So a little logistics on the pilot program. Of the 250 sites, we had about 46 of them move over to Canvas. These were all sites of faculty who volunteered, so this was an opt-in for the pilot program. Most of those sites were actually LRW, the Legal Research and Writing, so that was about half of our sites for the first year. We held trainings for all of the faculty assistants who were part of the pilot program, and we had one-on-one meetings with as many faculty as we could for the ones who were doing the pilot program. And just a funny side note here, my first day at this job was September 2nd, which was the very beginning of the pilot program. So it was a fun start. In fact, I learned iSites for about the first 3 or 4 months of my job. So I was learning the LMS that was essentially going out the door. I didn't start really getting into Canvas until the spring of that year. So the big thing I want to go over in this presentation are the gaps we discovered between iSites and Canvas. So the big ones were grades, essentially the visibility of grades. I don't know who here has used Canvas, but they're very grade heavy. It's in the left navigation, it's in the global navigation, it's very big. If you're a student, you see it all the time. Another one is native communication. That's the announcements in the inbox. These are the ways in which faculty would communicate with the students. The calendar, specifically office hour sign-up, student rosters, office hours, using office hour sign-up. Student roster, essentially how faculty can see student pictures, get their email, get their information. And finally, the homepage, and what I mean by that is deciding the right template for the homepage. Ideally, we'd like to have every homepage look similar, and we'd like to have the homepage be useful. So, starting with the grades tab, as I said before, grades were very visible in Canvas. If you're a student, you can see them in the left, and you can see them in the global navigation. Faculty could hide them on the left, but there was nothing set in Canvas to actually hide it in the global area, so if a student went up there, they would see grades. And the problem with that at the law school is that the registrar's office is very big on separating grades from the LMS and just having the students view the grades in their own system. And what we eventually did was that we hid the grades tab using some custom CSS, and that was not easy right away. The code was easy, but the issue was that Harvard University IT initially didn't want us to hide it. They didn't want us to customize essentially anything. And after a lot of pushback, especially with help from our dean, we eventually had the ability. It was essentially a non-starter. We really needed to have this done. And they gave in, and we customized it, and we actually hid the grades tab so students do not see the word grades in the very top of the site. Announcements. One of the first issues we realized with announcements is that if a faculty member sent an announcement out to the course, they did not receive a notification email of it. And their first instance was, well, did it go out? I never saw it. Did the students get it? Canvas eventually fixed this kind of in an odd way. They created another notification called Announcements Created by Me. So if you went to your notification settings and you click that, then you would get an email saying you sent this announcement to the course. It was kind of an odd way of doing it, but that was eventually fixed. Another problem with the announcement was you can only add one attachment. Faculty who were used to sending things with an email that you could attach 2 or 3 things. So in Canvas, if you attach one thing and then you go and attach a second thing, it just drops the first thing from the message. And on top of that, when the student gets the email notification, the attachment's not even in the email. So they wouldn't even, unless the faculty said there's an attachment in this, notification, please see it, they'd actually have to go back to the site and find it. Not ideal. The other part of communications is the inbox. This is kind of Canvas's version of in-app messaging. It's like a Facebook in-app messaging system. Very basic, as you can see from this picture. There's no way to change the font. You can't bold, you can't italicize, you can't underline, you can't change the color. I guess it's like Twitter. There's no other options available. Big one is that it's not as robust as an email client. The folders were very clunky. If you sent a message, it would not only be in your sent folder, it would be in your inbox folder, and the folders were they were nothing close to what you would use in an actual email client. It was just not ideal. And this was actually just generally disliked by everyone who used it in the pilot program. And at this point, we don't even use it anymore. We don't suggest using it. A little more about communications. I want to talk about the iSight emailer. What this would do is, as a faculty member, you could go into your iSight and you can send a message from within the iSight, and it would go out. It would go out to every student. They would receive it in their email address. And not only would it do that, it would actually archive the message in the iSight. So you're sending a message from the LMS out to the students in their email, and it would archive in the system itself. This is great, but it's a great example of over-customization. As far as I know, nothing like this really exists in another LMS. I mean, at this point, either you're communicating entirely in an application or you're communicating entirely in an email client. Having, the best of both worlds like this was great, but given that no other system really does that, explaining this to the faculty was difficult. So given the issues we had with announcements and especially with the inbox messenger, Harvard University IT, Central IT, eventually created something called the course emailer. And what it is, it's a third-party listserv that you would go into your Canvas course, you would actually just have a little link, click on the link, it would open up a box in your browser, and it would send a message to every student in the course. So you can send it to the entire class, you could send it to students. They then added functionality where you could send it to specific sections in the course, and this was essentially a fix to get around using the inbox. So if you wanted to send messages to particular students, you could use this. And the great thing was this gave faculty a choice. So if you were big on sending things in the application and you wanted to archive messages in the application, you use announcements. If you really just want to use your email client and that's it, then you use the course emailer. Template. So we took some time trying to figure out the best way for our homepage to appear, and this was our first crack at it. We have a beautiful picture of Langdale Hall, which is the law school library at Harvard. We have some gray buttons that you can see in the center there, the kind of information buttons. They would look out to things like course time, course meeting time, pictures of faculty. And then we had these blue buttons which would link out to course materials. So in Canvas, the two big ways to organize content is either putting it on pages or putting it in modules. So these blue buttons on the home page are a way for the students to get to those particular weeks very quickly. And we thought, oh, this is pretty cool. This is great. It's very organized. It's very clean. And then we did some UX testing with some students, and it turns out they really didn't like this at all. One of the biggest issues was that they didn't like the picture on the homepage because it just took up too much space. They would be on their mobile device, they'd be scrolling through, walking to class, trying to figure out where their class is, and they're trying to scroll, and then they don't even have the course logistics on the homepage. So they have to click on a button, the button takes them to the page with the course location, then they find it. So after the testing, we changed things around. We removed the picture, we got rid of that completely, and instead of having the course logistics hidden in on those gray buttons, we just threw it on the homepage, so the students could see it right away. So essentially one click, they open up their course site, there it is. One thing we then noticed is that this is actually very similar to what the iSights model looked like. It was essentially course logistics, staff photos, staff information, and links to documents. A little bit about the calendar. This is one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest gaps we had between iSites and Canvas. Appointment groups in Canvas can only include a course or a set of courses, not university-wide. We had a nice function in iSites where a faculty could create office hours for the entire university. So not only students in their class, but past students, people they know from other courses, people from other schools could just go onto their website, sign up for a time, and then meet them there. In Canvas, it's very connected to your course. So they're thinking as well, if you're not taking a course with this faculty member, you're probably not going to meet them for office hours, so why bother? Another issue right now in Canvas is that there's no way to create recurring appointment groups. So if you want to create office hours, say every Monday from 2 to 4, you have to manually go into creating the office hours and say Monday, June 1st, June 8th, so on and so forth for the entire semester. And this is just generally not great. And up to this point, Harvard still doesn't have a university-wide solution to this. We're getting people to use Canvas if they want to keep it to their course, but right now we're still hoping to have a solution from Harvard University IT by September 1st. The last thing on the list is the roster. The people tab in Canvas, one big thing they noticed right away was it doesn't include students' email addresses, and faculty like to use that to determine right away what year they are. At Harvard, their email address is something at JD16, JD17, or at LLM, so you could figure out right away what their graduation year is and what their degree is. Another thing in Canvas, and this is pretty much true across the board, printing from Canvas is not easy. They see themselves as strongly online content, so why would you ever need to print anything? And there are faculty members who like to not only print out their roster, but in iSites there was a way to print out student photos on index cards, so they can print out 30, 50 of them, and they could actually sit through and memorize the students' names before even the first class met. So they would walk into class on day one and address a student knowing their name. So this was another drawback. Eventually, Harvard, the law school registrar system, created a solution to this, in which you can go into their system, see the students' photos. They're still working on. I don't think they have a way to do the index cards yet, but they're still working on that. One thing to point out about this is if the law school wants to fix something IT-wise, because they don't have any control over doing it in Harvard, that's all Harvard Central, they usually just find a way to build it into their own system, which is what they did here. So that was the pilot program. Those were all the gaps we identified. Move over to full migration. So this is now summer 2015, and at this point, we're planning to move everybody over for the fall of 2015. So we held multiple trainings for the 50 or so faculty assistants. We had 3 trainings. We asked them all to come to one of them. We met with one-on-one with many faculty. We offered to meet with all of them. Some of them simply declined, but we got a good amount. The meetings we met with all the tenured faculty. We also met with a lot of visiting professors, and those meetings were interesting, particularly because some of them would have iSites experience, some of them would have Canvas experience, some of them had neither. In fact, the one who had no iSites experience were honestly a little bit easier, just because we can just show them Canvas right away and not have to worry about the gaps because they never actually saw them. And then throughout the summer, we held walk-in hours, particularly for the faculty assistants. So we would just sit in a room, and they could come, and we could meet with them any time. And they really enjoyed this. They really liked the opportunity to have one-on-one meetings with us whenever they could. And a big thing that we did was we created a Google Doc, and we just kept track of all the 250-plus courses, how the courses were going. The last time we met with one of the assistants, we kept track of everything. So finally moving on to deployment. We got 99% migration. There were a few courses from one department that we did not migrate. They needed a little extra time to figure out how they're going to do that, and we're working with them this summer to hopefully finish that. Even throughout the course of the fall, we still met with faculty and faculty assistants. I mean, it would be one thing in the fall if they set up their syllabus, set up their course materials, but later on in the semester they would say, oh, I want to start doing assignments, or oh, I want to use this discussion board feature. So, you know, it wasn't like the courses were completely done on September 1st. We would still help them build throughout the semester. And the best part was that it was a success. The migration year was it went very smoothly. Everybody had moved over. There were no major gripes, no major arguments. So just to sum up, lessons learned. Early on, figuring out that the faculty assistants were the ones who were primarily dealing with the site on a day-to-day basis. Just knowing that and then working with them primarily was great. Definitely the pilot year was necessary. I mean, we discovered so many issues and so many gaps over that year. The fact that we were able to do that and fix so much so that by the time we got to the full year migration, things went a lot smoother. User testing was crucial. The user testing we did with the students, we essentially gave them free pizza, and we got to pick their brain for about 10 minutes. It would always start with, oh, okay, I have 1 or 2 minutes free, but that's it. And then 10 minutes later, they'd still be talking to us, saying, well, that's kind of weird, and that's kind of cool, and you should keep that, and you should get rid of that. And lastly, early wins were very important. Getting the grades tab, getting the approval from Harvard University IT to fix the grades tab and do that custom work right away really showed that we were going to get help from them in getting any fixes we needed from them. And that is it. Any questions at this point? Yes?
How did you deal with
We don't particularly have many adjunct faculty. No.
well, we have
You mean the visiting faculty?
visiting faculty. That are loose or we train
We treated them all the same.
pretty much the same.
Yeah,
Anybody who's teaching,
they were faculty.
whatever, very.
Any other questions? Oh, so in Canvas, it's the appointment group. So you create an appointment group, you give it a specific location and time. The nice thing is that if you say you had a time from 3 to 5, you could actually split it into little half-an-hour sections. The problem was you couldn't do repeating days of the week. You actually had to enter every single day manually, even if it was every Monday of the semester. Yeah. Yes? I'd say there was still, throughout the course of the 2 years, we did a lot of prodding. There was a lot of, we met with the same faculty assistants multiple times, sometimes going through the same process. It definitely took a lot of time, but I think the hand-on touch we're able to have to meet with them one-on-one in their office, time after time after time. If they call us, we'd be in their office, in 10 minutes. But there were. Oh, yeah. I mean, there were some faculty assistants and some faculty who just got it right away, and we never heard from them again.
The absolute thing, all you can show them, don't show them anything else. So, somewhere in the middle.
Mhm.
But, we've got people really pushing out. Some use one.
Mhm.
It's been slow.